my pleasure now to welcome in my good friend and overall gentleman and hardest working man in Alabama media, Mr. Chris Stewart. Chris, how are you today?
I'm great, but nowhere close to hardest working. But that's nice of you to say. Hey, and I also knew that Avery Jr. and Riley had 13 each. If I got tickets for Poison,
you always have tickets, my man. You wanna revisit the hair metal days with me?
Chances are that I've got a ball game, so never mind. But thanks,
Chris. This team had a kind of a up and down rocky start in the out of conference, but man, they've responded well since the beginning of conference play. And I know the schedule they've played in conference hasn't exactly been world beaters, but a nice road win at Mississippi State, beating Vanderbilt anytime is a good win. Competitive for a while against Florida, great second half against LSU, and again last night, a second half they were able to come together and get enough done to get a win. Just your overall impressions, 4-1 in the SEC so far.
A year ago, Aaron, we were in a spot where Alabama had won some top 25 games, the wins over Wichita State and Notre Dame, to name a couple that were really big at the time and got everybody's attention before we ever got to Christmas. This year, I don't think there's any win like that wows you from a positive standpoint, but there also hasn't been a loss where you go, wow, how did we lose that? I think they've won the games they were supposed to, come close and missed out on a couple that they were capable of. It hasn't been anything spectacular, but they have gotten better, and I think being able to understand roles, being able to get into a true rotation as they have over the last month. With that, you've seen this team rebound the ball extremely well, much, much better than they had been. And I think that's something, along with their defense, when they're able to get set up in a half-court situation, that they've been able to hang their hat on. Where there's been a problem is when they turn the basketball over and take bad shots that lead to transition opportunities for the other team, and they're not able to get that half-court set, then they're pretty average. But when they get their half-court defense set, they're really good. So if they can be a little bit more consistent in that regard and just protecting the ball and in shot selection, I think they're going to be in a really good spot by the time the conference regular season wraps up.
You get to talk to him probably more than just about anybody else in the media. I'm talking about Avery Johnson. How much do you think free throw shooting is killing him right now?
It's frustrating because I know they work on it. I know that there is, for lack of a better term, there's punishment that comes with failure at the free throw line. But at the same time, you can't make the shots for them. And it is, it doesn't matter sometimes how much you work on something. It gets between the ears. It gets contagious. And if you had the majority of your free throws coming from bad shooters or bad free throw shooters, then you'd understand it. But by and large, they're getting their better shooters to the line. We know that Jimmy Taylor is never going to be really better than a 50% free throw shooter, and he's worked hard to get himself to that. We understand that. But there are a lot of other guys who are better shooters than they've shown in some games as of late. And once they get a few more makes, I think they're going to be fine, but it's tough to get over that. And so, yeah, it's frustrating for Avery, but probably no more so than it is for the players and everybody else on the staff.
Talking to Chris Stewart, the voice of Alabama men's basketball on CTSM broadcast. Also, you know him from his work in sideline reporting for Alabama football, and you know him from all his commercials. He's just overall everywhere. Good guy. So talking about something, I want to switch to a positive thing. You mentioned, and I think anybody that's watched this team realizes that if they're going to win, it's going to be because of what their effort and what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball. What makes them so good? Maybe for a team that its roster's not where they want it to be, they still play awfully good defense.
They do. You've got a couple of tall guys in Jimmy Taylor and Dante Hall, but there's not the 6'11" guy like they're going to have next year in Daniel Giddens. There's not a 7-footer. So when you think of height, I think most people tend to think of post guys. Well, they may give up an inch or two to some teams in the post in that regard, but their guards, and specifically on the wings, they're a lot bigger than most teams. They're more physical. They rebound better when you've got a guy like Riley Norris playing the 3, and you've got Dazon Ingram at 6'5", who rebounds as well as he does at the point or when he slides over. That's a pretty good advantage, and I think they're able to put out a roster that, in terms of physicality, can match up with most teams or is in better shape than most teams. But I think so much of rebounding is just desire and want to, and those are guys that do work hard. And look, they're not the best scoring team, they're not the best shooting team, but you can bring effort every night. You can defense every night. You can rebound, and they've been able to do that by and large a whole lot better over the course of the last month and a half. And I think that's why you've seen more consistent play and you've seen better results.
Chris, in talking to Avery, you're around that team a lot. I know we expected Avery Johnson Jr. to get minutes this year, but I don't know that we've expected, what he's been able to do. How surprising, or maybe not surprising, has it been, his performance this year?
I think it has been, and there's pluses and minuses with that. Okay, it's a real plus that Avery Johnson has given you what he has. He's been more productive offensively than most anticipated, maybe even the coaching staff. But on the flip side, he's had to get some minutes, and not so much as of late, but maybe a month ago when Corbin Collins wasn't 100%, or some guys were in foul trouble. So you've missed out on what you felt like some other guys could give you, but you have to be pleased that he's been able to respond. This is a guy that I think most people thought would be a 10 to 15 minute a game guy. He might average 4 or 5 points, give you a couple of 3 assists, a steal a game, something like that. And I don't know what his exact numbers are, but they're higher than that. His minutes have been more than most people anticipated. And so, look, that's a positive that he's responded that way. But what you also hope is that Corbin Collins can stay healthy, play at the level that we all have believed that he's capable of. And the reality is that's going to take a few minutes probably away from Avery Jr. And again, that's not all bad in terms of the team itself. But when you have a guy go down that you knew you'd be counting on to the degree that you would Corbin, it's really been nice to have a guy step in and not shy away from the responsibility the way AJ has.
Yeah, listen, they're 4-1 in conference. Haven't exactly played the best SEC schedule, but all you can do is play the games that are on your schedule. That said, the next 7 games are going to get a lot more challenging with games against Georgia and Arkansas and Auburn, South Carolina and Kentucky. What's reasonable expectation for these next 7 games?
I don't have it in front of me. I think this is a year where clearly Kentucky's your best team, but I think South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia on nights when they are at their best can compete and probably win. I think there are a handful of other teams after that on the nights they play their best, and if Kentucky is playing like a bunch of freshmen, it could be really interesting down the stretch. But give me the 7 again that are in front. I know the next 3 are Auburn, Georgia on the road, then Mississippi State at home. Help me after that. Okay,
you got Auburn at Georgia, home versus Mississippi State, at Arkansas, home against Auburn, at South Carolina, home against Kentucky.
You tell me where Vegas will have Alabama favored.
Right.
It knows.
Right.
I don't know. But those are, I would say you can come out of that stretch easily with a winning record. But if you revert to some play that we saw earlier in the year from Alabama, you don't rebound as fervently. You get loose with the basketball. There's not a team in that stretch that can't beat Alabama. Now, that being said, if they play as they have the bulk of the last month, then there's a bunch of wins that are available. But I think Arkansas is better than maybe we've given credit for or thought they would be. I think Mississippi State is extremely talented, and I really think for people that have followed Alabama and Mississippi State in the SEC over the last 25 years, you're about to see State and Alabama get really, really good again like they used to be, and I think that rivalry is about to pick up in a big-time way because the talent level is about to go through the roof in both Starkville and Tuscaloosa. So that's going to be a tough one back at home. We know Auburn will be ready down there, and frankly hadn't played great down there in a while. So Georgia is going to be good everywhere, but especially at home. And we know what Kentucky and South Carolina are. So is there a game on there that Alabama can't win? No. But there's also not a single game that they can coast and win, in my opinion, as you look at the next 7.
Wrapping up here with Chris Stewart, the voice of Alabama men's basketball on CTSM broadcast. And finally, Chris, I'm not going to ask you to answer for Avery, but you're in a position that you see some of the best college basketball venues in the country year in and year out. New athletic director at Alabama will be introduced today, and Greg Byrne, a guy who's been at a couple of good basketball schools, most recently Arizona. How far does Coleman have to go, or Alabama need to go to be a good, great basketball venue?
That's a good question. It's tough. It's been a long time, Aaron, since I have gone to many ball games strictly as a fan, and you can relate because most of the time we're really fortunate that when we go to the office, it's either a basketball arena, baseball field, or football stadium most of the time. So what we're looking for in a venue is different from the casual fan. From what I observe, though, and from what I hear from other people, when you're talking about a concourse area, concessions, things like that, Coleman's probably about as good as you'll find in the league. There are some things that you'd always like to see better, but I think it's very comparable in terms of the practice facility, the locker rooms, the player lounge, the recruiting amenities. What they've done at the University of Alabama to be competitive is tremendous, and I think it's in a very good spot. But now you start looking around at bells and whistles and other things that you're bringing in on recruiting weekends and recruiting opportunities with players, and you start looking at the age of a facility relative to others in the league. You start looking at what some have compared to you, and I don't have the answer for what all needs to be done. There are probably some things that could be done with Coleman, but there are certain things based on just how it was originally built that you can't change. It'd be great to have seats that were straight up, and so you had the feeling that the fans who were furthest from the floor were right on top of the action instead of the next county, as it is in some places. But I don't know what can be changed and what can't. And there will come a day where a brand new facility is needed. I just don't know if that's sooner rather than later.